Hello and welcome to Module 2 in our Python series. Today we're going to be looking at IDLE, which is Python's built-in IDE or Integrated Development Environment. And of course, we'll be using IDLE in order to write scripts focusing on the manipulation of strings. Now, with regards to IDEs or Integrated Development Environments, there are many others. For example, there's PyCharm, there's Visual Studio Code that you can use. There's also Sublime Text. We will be working with each of those in later sessions, but today we are using IDLE. So let's look at the scripts we need to write, and specifically the first script, and that's writing a script to swap two strings. That's pretty simple. All I need you to do is first of all load your Python shell. We will work with the Python shell in order to test our logic before putting it into the script, and this is exactly what the Python shell is for. So now if we have string 1, let's say equal to just a simple string like tigers, and then we have str2 equal to, let's say, whales. Okay, now we want the contents of str1 to be moved to str2 and vice versa, right? We can't obviously do something like this, because if we do that, what would happen? We have now lost the value of str1, right? So what we can do is use another variable into which we store the contents of str1. Once we've stored the contents of str1 in temp, we can then override the contents of str1 with the contents of str2. So now str1 has got wheels, right? And then we can override the contents of str2 with the contents of temp. And so we have now swapped the strings, right? Now we could write this or put this into a script. You need to just type in IDLE, IDLE, right? You can click open, you can press enter, and you will get IDLE. Now IDLE itself presents the Python shell, as you can see, right? That's the primary prompt. But of course, we're going to be using the shell that we loaded earlier in order to test our logic. But we will use IDLE to write our script. So click on File and then click on New File. And now we can start writing the script. Let's call it swap strings. Remember to give your functions meaningful names, and we're going to have those strings come in to the function, right? So these are the parameters to the function. And we can now use the same logic, but maybe we could include some print statements here. So print string 1 before swapping, right, comma string 1, and then similarly print string 2 before swapping, comma string 2, right? And then of course we can put in the logic to swap the strings. So temp equal to string 1, right? String 1 equal to string 2, and then string 2 equal to temp. It's a good idea here to include comments. So I can just put in 2 hashtags and say swapping the strings, right? And then we can have print statements, right, which will say string 1 after swapping, right? And then string 2 after swapping. You don't really need a space there, so you can delete that. Okay. And now we could run this, but of course we need to save the file. But when you click run, you will see you get this message, save before run or check. Click OK. And now let's try to save this in the Python 39 folder. And when you try to do that, you'll get a message saying you don't have the permission to save. Contact the administrator, blah blah. Would you like to save in the user folder instead? Yes. Right? And when you are here, you can click on that arrow and create a new folder. As you can see, I already have one, so I'm going to save that there. Okay, save it, and we're done. And now we could run that. We need to know the name of the function, of course. Swap strings, and we'll put in str1, let's say elephants, comma, whales. Okay, so str1 contains that. Or what you can do if you want to be, even more clearer, you can say str1 equal to elephants. Remember, this is the shell, so we can do this. And str2 equal to whales, right? And then we can call swap strings and pass in str1 comma str2. Note that you could also name them differently. The names don't have to necessarily be the same as the parameters. Okay, and you have before swapping, right, and after swapping. Okay, so I hope that's clear. The next script we need to write is given a string, convert it to uppercase without using the Python built-in upper function. Okay, so let's go back to the shell. We know that if I say string1 dot upper, I will get that in capitals. Similarly, string1 dot lower. But what if I can't use these functions? Okay, in that case, we need to use what are called ASCII values. So let me just introduce you to the ASCII table if you aren't already aware of it. So this is the ASCII table, and you can see here you've got uppercase A, which has a decimal value 65 or ASCII value 65. And we have lowercase a, which has ASCII value 97. So if you subtract 32 from 97, you will get 65. And you will observe that for the lowercase b as well, if I subtract 32 from 98, I'll get 66. So there's a difference of 32 between lowercase and uppercase alphabets or letters of the alphabet, and we can use that. How? Python has a function called odd. So if I say odd of lowercase a, it will show me 97. Okay. If I say chr, which is another function of 97, okay, it will show me the lowercase a again. So basically with odd, I can pass in a letter and I will get the ASCII equivalent, and to chr I can pass in the ASCII equivalent and get the character or the letter. Now, how do I use this to convert to uppercase? I can say y equal to odd of a. Okay, so now I have y as 97, right? If I subtract 32 from that, let's say y minus equal to 32, what will I get? 65. And then if I say chr of y, I will get a. Okay, so I hope you get the idea of how we can use this. We take each character. Let's say we've got the string whales. We take each character, right? We'll use the function odd on the character, so we'll get the ASCII value equivalent. We'll subtract 32 from that. So we'll get the ASCII value for the uppercase of the same letter. And then we print it out. So let's now proceed to write the script. We need to start a new file, and then you can close the one behind. Def convert to uppercase. Now you don't need to have your functions named so long. The reason I'm doing it is so that for your later reference you're clear about what the function is doing. Okay, and we're going to pass in the string, of course. And now we have to remember go through each character. And so we can use the for loop. Okay, so for, let's just say x in range. Now range is an object. We will have to mention the start. Our start will be 0 because remember all strings are arrays. So we need to start at the 0th element of the array, right? In this case, it would be W, right? 0, comma, the length of the string. Okay. So until the length of the string, right? What should we do? We will say y equal to odd of. Now we need to specify that we want this first character. So we'll say string of x, right? Remember strings are arrays, and so I can refer to each element with what is called the subscript. Okay, so string of x, the first time will be string of 0, which if we look at Wales will be W. The next time when this loop is executed, x will increase by 1. Now that's the way the for loop works. And by the way, you could specify that you want to actually step by 2 instead of the default 1, in which case it would skip over the alternate characters, right? But that's not what we want. So we're going to just leave it at the default 1. So as I said, in the second time this loop is executed, the value of x would be 1, and so string of x would be h, and so on and so forth, right? So odd of x, and we have to subtract 32, right? And then we can say print character of y, or CHR of y, right? I hope you understood this logic. You're taking the string, then we're using the for loop. You can call this anything you like, right? You can call this character, right? Or you can call this n, you can call it whatever you like, right? We call it x in range 0, comma, len of string. This is important. Start from the 0th element up till the length of the string. And then within that loop, we're saying store in y odd of string of x. So first it will be odd of w, right? Minus 32. So it will get the value of uppercase W and then print CHR of y, right? Okay, so let's run this now and see what happens. Just click on run module. Okay to save, and we'll save this as change to upper or uppercase. Okay, and now we can run that, pass in a string. Again, you can save something in str1. So let's say hello, and then pass that into the function. Name of the function str1. And you can see now this is printed in uppercase, but of course it's printed vertically. Why? Because by default print will print every character in the next line. Remember, this is within the loop, that's why it's doing that, unless I say comma end equal to empty set of quotes. Now if I run this, and again I don't need to type this in, so I can take the first string, for example, right? Just Control C, paste it here, right? Okay, and then do the same thing with this call to the function, Control C and then Control V. Okay, and you can see now I have it nicely printed out in the same line. Now what if we had to send in a longer string? Let's say hello and welcome to string manipulation, something like that, right? And then of course we can just do a Control V, press enter, and now you see that I don't have any space, but that's not what I want, right? How do I ensure that there's a space after each word? We need to tweak our logic a bit. So here we can say if string of x, right, not equal to space, right, then do this, right, which is y equal to odd, and then we need to make sure that this is indented, and then we can say else if it is a space, that is, we can just print the space, comma, end equal to, again, that empty set of quotes, right, to ensure that we remain in the same line. Now if we run this, so let's just copy it from there, Control V, and then now we'll say convert to, so we can just copy this actually instead of typing it in, Control C and Control V. You need to make sure though that there's no space there, or you will get an indentation error. Remember, this is the shell and it's again strict on indentation, as is Python, right? So now press enter and you see we have that nicely spaced out. Let's move on now to the next script we need to write, and just before we leave this slide, it's important for you to remember that ASCII, or American Standard Code for Information Interchange, is the character encoding standard for all electronic communication, and all text in computers and other electronic devices represented through ASCII code. Now we go back to our scripts, write a function to capitalize all words in a sentence. Again, let's go to the shell. We know that if we said str1.capitalize, right, we have the first letter in capitals. But what if we had str1 equal to, and what if we wanted the first letter of every word to be capitalized? Now we can't say capitalize because that would just, as we know, capitalize just the first letter. So what do? We need to recognize here that after a space, that's the letter that needs to be capitalized. Again, after a space, this letter has to be capitalized, and so on and so forth. So we can use that when writing the code, right? So let's proceed now to write our code. We start a new file. We just close that one, and we call this capitalize all words, and that's going to bring in a string, of course, right? Now we'll use the for loop again. So for x in range 0, comma, len of string, right? Just make sure that you have the correct number of open braces, and then of course you need to make sure those braces are closed. Now what do we check? If string of x is a space, right? So if it is a space, we just need to print out that space, right? There's nothing else to do. So print space, comma, end equal to, right? What's the next condition we need to take care of? We need to determine whether before string of x there is a space, in which case x has to be capitalized, or string of x rather has to be capitalized. So here we'll say elif. Why are we using elif? Because we have more than one condition. We can't just say else here, because that's the end of the if statement. We have to check for if there is a space before x, in which case x or string of x has to be capitalized. And the last condition would be if string of x is not a space and there is no space before string of x, right? So let's first deal with when there is a space before string of x. So we say string of x, and we need to check 1 before that, right? So x minus 1, right, is equal to a space. Then we need to capitalize this letter, of course, right, which is string of x. So we say, we know we have to use odd, right? So we can use the same logic we used in our last script. Y is equal to odd of string of x, right, minus 32, right? And then print character of y, comma, don't forget to put in the end equal to an empty set, of course, to make sure we don't move to a new line, right? Or rather the print doesn't move to a new line, right? Else, so this means that string of x is not a space and the character before x is also not a space. In that case, it's any other character, right? And we just need to print that character out. So print string of x, comma, end equal to, okay, right? So I hope you understood what we did. We're starting with 0, right, until the end of the string. If string of x equal to space, we just print the space. If string of x minus 1 equal to space, meaning before the character there is a space, then we capitalize that character. Otherwise, we just print out the character. So let's see how this runs. And we need to save that, of course. Capitalize words. If you're finding that this is too crowded, just close it down and you can just run module again, you get the empty shell. So now we need to provide the string, right? So let's create the string, string1 equal to, and then we call the function and we pass in str1. Now you can see that we do have a capital or an uppercase for every word, right? But what about the first one? So we need to take care of that. How do we do that? We could do something like this. We'd say here, print, and now I'm going to combine these. So I can say print odd, or rather character of odd of string of x minus 32, comma, end equal to then close. Make sure we have the correct number of closing brackets, right? So let's close this one as well. Now let's run this. Again, we can just take the string, we don't need to type that in. Control C, Control V. Now there's a space here, make sure you delete that. Or like I said, you have an indentation error. And then pass in the string to the function. Let's see what happens. Now we have an error here. Okay, it says local variable x reference before assignment. We're trying to use x here before the for, and we can't do that. So we'll say this should be 0, right? So we're going to look at string of 0, and this is the first element in the string, in which case it would be w for our string. And now that this is 0, this should not start from 0, right? If this starts from 0, what happens? Let's run it and see. And now you can see I have 2 occurrences of w. And therefore, this should start from 1. And now if we run it, and now you can see we just have that single w. Okay. Now, of course, there is a shorter method. So let's look at that now. I'm going to select all of this, press Alt and 3, and that will comment it out. Okay. And here we'll put in another comment and we'll say using an alternative method. So what is the alternative method? We can say string, okay, equal to space dot join. Now we are using the join method. So the join method is going to join every word with the space. And then we're going to say x dot capitalize, okay, for x in string dot split, right? We just say here print string, and that's all we need to do, right? Let's run this again. Save it. Okay, and now you can see that that is nicely capitalized. Okay, there is still another shorter method. So now I'm going to comment this out. Alt 3. We just say string or print string dot title. This is also a built-in function. Okay, now let's run this. Right, and again we need to copy that. Control C, Control V. Now here you can see there is a space, so delete that. Press enter, and then of course call the function. Okay. Right, and you see we get the same output. So now we went from this many lines of code to 2 to 1. One disadvantage of the title function is that if I had a string like this, string 1 equal to, right, and now we'll send that to this function, and you can see I get this capital S as well. Okay, so to avoid that, it is better to use, and I'm going to comment this out now, it's better to use this method. If you want to uncomment a block, Alt and 4. Okay, so now you will see that I will not have that issue when I pass in, an apostrophe. And you see, we don't have that issue. Okay, so that's about capitalizing. Let's move on to the next script we need to write, which is write a script to remove all spaces in a string. If you think about it, if I have this string and I need to remove spaces, I will start from 0th element. Remember, strings are arrays, so 0th element till the last one. When I come to an element that's a space, I will just skip over it and print the next one. So how do we do that? We just start a new file. Okay, and let's call it remove spaces. Okay, and we're going to bring in a string, of course. And here we'll say for x in range 0, len of string, right? And we say if string of x is equal to a space, right? Continue, that is go back into the loop. Remember, when I'm saying go back into the loop, x is going to increase by 1, right? So for example, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If x is 6, it will skip over that, and so we come to a. Okay, else if it's not a space, that is, just print the character, right? So print string of x, and we need to make sure that the print command stays in the same line, so end equal to double quotes, or you can use single quotes as well, that doesn't matter. Okay, let's run this. Run. We need to save that, save the file there. Okay, so now I can pass in a string. Okay, and then I call the function and I remove the spaces. Now, as you may have figured out, Python has its own function, and for that what we can do is Alt and 3. We can say here string 1 equal to string dot split. Okay, and then for x in string 1, right? Print x dot L strip, left strip, so strip all the spaces on the left. Okay, let's see how that works. Run. Now you can see, of course, it's printing it in vertical lines, so you cannot really make out whether it's removed the spaces or not. In order to change that, you know what to do. End equal to double quotes or single quotes. Run. And you see the spaces are removed. Okay. So, like I said, if you're asked to write code without using the Python function, you know what to do. And if you're allowed to use the Python function, you know what to do as well. Okay, moving on to the next script we need to write. Create a phone book. Now here we're going to be given the text. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to the Python shell. We'll put in the text here, right? But let me just clear the screen. You know what you have to do to clear the screen. You need to write a function. You can call it clear as well, right? And then you just type in import OS and then os.system and our operating system command to clear the screen. That's Windows, the CLS, and then we just type in clear. Now coming to the phone book, we need to put in some text. Okay, so our text will be a multi-line string equal to those 3 double quotes, Ross, Mac, Fluff. Okay, and then there's a colon and a space, telephone number, dot 345, dot 1254, and the street number and name. Press enter. Next, person needs more. Put in the telephone number. We just need to make sure we have a colon and a space there, and then 892.345.3428, and then the street number 436, street name. So now I have all the entries. I could split this text, right? So let's say I said split text equal to text dot split. And if I looked at split text, you can see that yes, the text has been split up, but it's been split up to the extent that even the name of the street has been split up, and that's not what we want, right? So what we could do is we could split on the basis of \n. Remember, we pressed enter after each of these entries. So we could say here entries equal to text dot split, and then put in the \n. Now if I looked at entries, you can see that I have it properly split. But I don't want this colon and the space, right? So what I could do now is use regular expressions. So to use regular expressions, we need to import the module first, import RE. Okay, and what we do here, we'll say phone book equal to, the result is going to be a list, re.split. Okay, and then we specify that pattern that we don't want, colon, 0 or 1 occurrences indicated by the question mark, and then the space, comma, entry, that means for the entry, comma 3, right? 3 is the max split parameter, so it will split the text on the basis of 3 spaces, or the first 3 spaces. There may be more spaces, but those will be ignored, right? For entry in entries, right? So again, for each entry, right, split on the basis of 3 spaces or maximum 3 spaces, right, and remove the colon as well. Okay, so let's now see what phone book looks like. And you can see now that there has been a split. First of all, my colon and space has been removed, right? 1 space, 2 spaces, right, after the colon, and the third is after the telephone number. What if I say, give me a split on the basis of 4 spaces? So let's make this 4. Okay, and now if I press enter and look at phone book, right, so now if we look at phone book, you will see that the street number has been separated as well. So that's 4 spaces, right? So in terms of writing the script, instead of typing this text in again, Just select all of it. Okay. Control C. Okay, and then come into idle. Start a new file. I call it create phone book. Okay, and there's nothing coming in here, right? We're going to be supplying the text. Control V. Okay, right? Make sure to delete these ellipses. Okay, and delete these as well, and these as well. Okay. These cannot be indented because remember this is a continuous string, multi-line string. Okay. So now that we have that, we need to split it up. So entries equal to text dot split on the basis of the \n, right? Okay. Then what do? We say phone book equal to RE. Now in order to use RE, we need to import it. All imports and all initialization of variables should be at the top of the script. Okay, and this is for any language that you code in. Phone book equal to RE, and that's going to be a list, so RE dot split, right? And then what did we specify? The pattern, begin with the quote, right? We specify colon, or 0 or 1 occurrence of the colon, a space, and that's the pattern. Comma entry, right? Comma 3, right? Or entry in entries. Then what we can do after this is we can say for x in phone book, or if you want to say detail, for detail in phone book, print detail. To be even more specific, you could call it phone detail, right? Okay, and print phone detail. Now let's see how this works. Run. We need to save it, of course, right? And now this is too crowded, so I'm going to start a new shell. Create phone book. And you can see all our entries. Okay, now let's move on to the next. Next one says, given a list like this, return a list that looks like, you know, something like that, where there are numbers. We'll come straight to our script. Okay, let's write a new script file, new file, and we can call that def enum list. And it's going to bring in a list there. Let's call it list1, right? And all we need to do here is to use a function called enumerate. So all we need to say is list enumerate list1. Okay, and that's all. Let's now run this. Enumerate list. Okay, and now of course we need to create that list, so we take the same list. So L1 equal to, okay, And now we call the function. So enum list L1. Okay, we didn't print it out. So let's go back to where we have that function and we'll just say print, and that's all. Okay, run. And you see we have that list nicely numbered. But of course it's starting with 0. Right, so we can change that. All we need to do is specify here start equal to 1. Okay, now let's run this. Okay, and now you can see it starts from 1. Now moving on to the next script. Given a string text equal to 100, 200, 300, etc., write a script to print out the sum of the numbers in the string. Note that each of these is part of a string. Okay, let's go back to the shell. Right, so because each of those that we saw just now is part of a string, we cannot do addition on that. So we cannot do something like this. Right, let's say str1 equal to, I cannot say, let's see, I have something called sum. I cannot say sum plus equal to str1 of 0. Right? I get unsupported operand types for plus equal to int and str because sum is int and this is str. So what's the way out? I can take each of these and convert it to an integer. Right? So I can say string split, right, equal to string for str1 dot split. We know that then str split will be a list, and then I can say for x in str split, right? I can say here sum plus equal to int of x, right? Okay, what do I get here? It says there's a comma. So what can I do to avoid that? I can say str split equal to str dot split on the basis of the comma, right? So I can put in the comma there. So now if I look at str split, okay, so I have something like that, right? Whereas you see here I have the comma as part of that element. So now if I say for x in str split, right, and then I say sum plus equal to int of x, right? Now if I check sum, you see it's 1500. So now we can use that logic in our script, right? So we'll start a new file and the string is going to come in, of course, and we'll say str split equal to string dot split, and we have to specify that character on the basis of which we want to split, and then we say for x in str split sum plus equal to int of x. But remember that we need to define sum. So here we say sum equal to 0, right? Otherwise you will get an error. So sum plus equal to int of x, and finally we can print. Okay, so now if I run this, We need to save it, of course. Some strings. Okay, and let's again run this in a new shell. So let's see. Now let's see string or str1 equal to, and then we get the sum is 1500. Okay, I hope you're clear with that logic. The next thing we need to do is write a script to find all adverbs in a sentence. Now, again, let's go back to the shell. And I'm going to clear the screen. Now we know that adverbs end in ly, right? So I can have a string like this. Now how do we find out the adverbs? We know that adverbs end in l and y. So again, we can use regular expressions, right, to figure this out. Very simply, we can say, and we first have to import re, of course, and then re.find all. We have learned re.split. Now it's re.find all. And we need to specify this is a raw string. What's the meaning of a raw string? Which means that the backslash, which is normally an escape character, right, will now be treated as an actual character. And why do I need it to be treated as an actual character? Because I need to look for a pattern again, right? And the pattern is \w. Now, \w in regular expressions has a certain meaning. It means look for the characters that are ASCII 0 to 9, A to Z, and underscore. So we'll look for those characters, okay, plus ly. Where do I look for this pattern? In string 1. Okay, and you'll see I get the adverbs. Now that's one way of doing it. There's another way, right, where we can use Python's ends with, and here is an important point. As per the Python documentation, it's better to use Python functions rather than to use regular expressions, because sometimes regular expressions are not very stable in terms of the results. Right, now how do we use ends with? We can say string 2 equal to string 1 dot split, right? So string 2 will have different words, and then for x in string 2, right, if x dot ends with ly, right, print x. Okay, I forgot the parenthesis around the print. So let's do that again. For x in string 2, if x dot ends with ly, right, then print x. And there you have your adverbs. Now I'm not going to write the script. I'm sure you can figure this out, right? All you need to do is either use regular expressions or use ends with. If you want to save this, you know what to do. You can just select all of it and save it in Notepad. Control C to copy it, and then Control V to paste it into that Notepad file. Okay, moving forward, write an algorithm to print a list with every alternate word starting with the first word in the right to left order. So what this means is, let me go back to the shell. It means that if I have a list equal to, starting with the first word, this should be printed in reverse, then this one, and then this one, right? Now, first of all, how do I print in reverse? If you remember the last time, we spoke about slicing, right? And what did we do for that? Let's say we say list 1 of 0, right? And we want that returned to us in reverse order. That's what you get, right? In reverse order. So we can use this, right, in the script. Let's now go and write our script. File, new file. Let's call it, and of course we're going to bring in a list here. List 1. We need a loop here because we don't know the length of the list that is going to come into this, right? So for x in range 0, len of list 1, right? Then what do we say? Now, remember I spoke about how we have a step here. So we could use that. We can say step 2, right? So go to 0, then 2, then 4, etc. Right? And then we'll say list 1 of x equal to list 1 of x, and then we mention the slice -1, and then we can say print list 1. Let's see how this works. So I hope you understood what we're doing here. 0 until the len of list 1, that's the last element, but start with 0, then go to 2, and then 4, and so on. Okay, so now let's run this module, save it, and now of course we need to create our list. So L1 equal to, and then we say, and you can see now that every alternate is in the reverse. Right, let's move on now. Given a string, I am the master of my fate and the captain of my soul. Find out if the string starts with I and ends with soul. Now again, we can use regular expressions here, right? Or we can use Python's functions, starts with and ends with. So let's first look at regular expressions. We have our string 1 equal to, now we are asking, or rather the question is asking to check whether the string starts with I and ends with soul. So here we'll say x, or rather x equal to re dot search, okay, and we can say here at the beginning I followed by any character, the dot represents any character, and any number of occurrences of any character ending with soul, and the dollar signifies the end. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. Where do we want to find this? First of all, close the pattern or end the pattern in str1. Okay, and now you'll see x gives you this. Let's try the same thing with an str2 equal to something else. Okay, now let's do the same thing. We'll say x equal to re.search, this time str2. Now let's see what's x, and you see there's nothing. So we can write a script, right? And we can check for if x, then we know that there is a match. Now coming to what is returned in x, this is called a match object. It shows you the exact span as in starting and ending, and then of course the actual match. As I said, that's one way of doing it. Another way is to say x equal to re dot search. Okay, and of course we can use double quotes as well, starting with I dot, that means any character, any number of occurrences, and then so, but I say backslash z, comma str1. Okay, and you see I get the same response or the same answer. Similarly, I can use another method. I can say re.search. Okay, and here I can say backslash E. E is the first letter of the alphabet. So starting, we want an I, then of course the dot and the star or the asterisk. So at the end, right? So this one, E, remember the first letter of the alphabet, Z is the last. Okay, and of course we need to close that pattern or close the quotes on that pattern and str1. And now if you look at X, it contains the same thing. Right? You can, as I said, use Python starts with and ends with. So we'll do that later. Now let's proceed to actually write the script. So I'm going to start a new file here. New file and find pattern. String is going to come in. And here we'll say x equal to re. Right? But of course we need to import re. So let's do that first. Then we say x equal to re dot search. So you've seen re dot split, re dot find all, and now re dot search. And I'm going to use the backslash e. Right? Starts with I, and that's any character, any number of occurrences, soul, and backslash z. Right? Close the quotes for the pattern. We need to look for that in string. And here we can say if x print, right, else print. Okay. Now of course we need to save that. You can also save it like this and then do a run, but I prefer to actually just do the run because it combines both the things. So save that, save. Okay, so now string 1 equal to, right? So now call the function find pattern, right? And str1 is the string. And it says the string does begin. Now let's try with another string. String 2 equal to. And now let's call the function string 2. And there you have it. Okay. Now the starts with and ends with, I'm not going to put into the script. You just do it here. If string 2 dot starts with I and string 2 dot ends with so, right, print true, else print false. Right, so string 2 was what? Oceans and seas. So you see how that works. Right, moving on to the next script we need to write an algorithm to sort a list. Now, as you may have figured out, there is a function built in. Okay, now we look at that function later. First, let's figure out the logic without using the function. Like I said earlier, you may go to an interview and they'll say, okay, you write down a script, right, or write a function that will sort a list without using built-in functions, right? So let me again take you back to the shell. Let's try to clear this. Now, let's say I have a list 1 equal to, if we think about it, for each element, I have to take the first element, compare it with all of these, right? Then move on to the second one, compare it with all of these, and so on and so forth. I will therefore need a loop, right? So let's now go to our script. Okay, and let's see how we can write this. So def sort list is going to bring us a list. Now, as I said, we need a loop, right? So for x in range 0, comma, len of list 1, right? Now, as I said, this particular element, it's a 0th one, right? It has to check with all of them. So how do we do that? We can use another loop for y in range, and we will start it with element 1, right? So it will be 0 and 1, and then this one will increase. So let's put a 1 here, comma, len of list 1. Okay, and then what we'll say is, okay, now idle is telling me that I do not have matching brackets. Okay, so if list 1 of x is greater than list 1 of y, right, then we need to do a swap. We know how to do a swap, right? We store the value in temp equal to list 1 of x, right? Then list 1 of x equal to list 1 of y, right? And then list 1 of y equal to 10, right? And then we can print the list, right? Right, so let's look through how this code will run. So x will start at the 0th element, so x will be here, and then y will start at this one, right? And then this loop will be executed until y reaches the length of the list. X, by the way, will still be 0, right? So it will compare 0 with 1, 0 with 2, 0 with 3, 0 with 4, and so on. Now, after the loop where y is incrementing has reached the length of list, control goes back to the outer loop. And then x will become 1. Now, do I need to check 1 with 1? No, I don't, right? So what I will do here then is, I will say, instead of saying 1, I will say x plus 1. So what will happen then? The first time it will check 0 with 0 plus 1, that's 1, right? The next time control moves to this outer loop, it will check 1 with 2. Okay, got it? So 1 with 2, 1 with 3, 1 with 4, and so on. Right, now let's see if this logic works. Run. We need to save this. Sort a list. Right, I'm going to start a new shell there. Okay, we need to create a list. So L1 equal to, and now we can call the function sort list with L1. And you can see that's nicely sorted. Now let me show you the power of Python. So I'm going to comment out all this code, Alt and 3. And there's only one line that we need to write here. Print sorted of list 1. Run. Remember, all the rest is commented out here. And now we'll just say sort list with L1. Okay, we need to take this list again. So let's do a Control C there. Control V. You see it's telling you L1 is not defined. That's because it's considering, this as a separate execution altogether, and so all variables are lost. So now sort list L1, and you can see that's sorted. Okay, but like I said, if you're told that you cannot use a function, then you know what to do. Okay, moving on. Write an algorithm to determine if a word is a palindrome. What's the meaning of a palindrome? Let's go to the shell. A palindrome is something like this. Let's say I have radar. Okay. Right, so, and of course this reads the same from left to right and right to left, and that's what is a palindrome. Another example, rotator. Okay, and so on and so forth. So if we find words like this, those are palindromes. Now we've got to write code to determine if this string is a palindrome or not. So what do? One way is we determine the middle character. How do we determine the middle character? Let's say string 1 equal to rotator. Right, then I can say A equal to string 1 flow division 2. What will be A? Oh, sorry, right, because I'm trying to divide a string with an int. So I will say A equal to len of string 1, right, flow division 2. What's A? 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. Right, so that's the middle. Now I can count forwards and I can have another counter counting backwards and see if the first element in the string is equal to the last, the second last, or the second element is equal to the second last, and so on. So let's proceed now to write a script using that. Okay, so file, new file. So now what do we write first? We need to determine the middle element of the string, right? So let's call it mid equal to len of string flow division 2, right? Why flow division? We don't want the float part, right? We just want the integer part. Then we have a counter 1 equal to 0. That's to start from beginning of the string, right? If you look at rotator, to start from this element, and then counter 2 should start from, where should it start from? Len of string. Remember that in the case of rotator, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But in terms of the elements in the string, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So len of string -1. Then I can use a while loop. While string of counter 1, right, is equal to string of counter 2, right? So as long as this element is equal to this one and this element is equal to this one and so on and so forth. So while that is equal and CTR1 is not equal to mid, right, which means we haven't reached the middle character. Okay, then we just add to the counter 1 so that we move to the next character or the next element in the string, and counter 2 minus equal to 1. Remember, counter 2 is the one counting backwards, right? Okay, then we say when it comes out of the loop, if when the loop is exited, counter 1 is not equal to mid, right? What does that mean? If counter 1 is not equal to mid, it means that there was a mismatch somewhere, right? All the characters didn't match. Then what I will say is print, okay, else print. Now let's see if this works. Now if we run this code, let's check to see if it works. Palindrome check. Again, I'm going to start a new shell. And let's try out our code. So palindrome check. Let's say rotator. Rotator is a palindrome. Palindrome check. Elephant. Is elephant a palindrome? Elephant is not a palindrome. Okay, so this code works. So let me take you back to the shell. We have str1, which is rotator, right? I can say str2 equal to str1. Start at the beginning, go to the end in reverse. What is str2? It's rotator again. So if str1 then is equal to str2, it's a palindrome. Let's try another word. Let's say str1 equal to pineapple. Okay, and str2 equal to str1. Start at the beginning, go to the end, reverse, right? Now what is str2? Is str1 equal to str2? Sorry, that was the wrong thing. Okay, so let me do this again. str2 equal to, right? And then str1 equal to str2. Let's say false. So it's not a palindrome, right? So now let's write the script using what we saw just now. We can again comment out this code, Alt and 3, right? And let's write the code up here. Okay, so what do? We say str2 equal to string, again beginning to end in reverse, right? And then we say if str2 is equal to string, print else, print. Okay, so now let's run this. And now we check palindrome, check, pass in rotator, right? Rotator is a palindrome. Palindrome, check, water, water is not a palindrome. And that's again the power of Python. Which brings us now to the last script we need to write. Given a list with words dear, etc., etc., create a new list with words that begin with D. I'm going to leave this with you. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Right, so this ends the session for today. In the next session, we'll deal with manipulation of numbers. So till then, take care, stay safe, bye.